The next train to arrive at platform 2C will be 11:10 from Liverpool.
You know, the problem with talking about journeys on television these days is that television has rendered the word almost meaningless. Taking 3 steps across the studio floor to place a dish in front of the judges for tasting is not a journey, no matter how emotionally draining it might be for the cookery contestant involved. Cycling for 3 weeks over Alps, Pyrenees and roads rendered all but impassable by nutters in mankinis, now that is a journey. It's also, of course, a slightly simplified description of the Tour de France. And this year, as if to underline the madness and magnitude of the whole enterprise, the annual journey to Paris begins in Leeds. And from there it takes in some of the most spectacular parts of Yorkshire, with a stage 1 tour of the Dales on the way to Harrogate and some serious Pennine climbs on the road from York to Sheffield on stage 2. The final stage in the UK heads south for a finish on the Mall in London, by way of saying sorry for having chosen God's own country over the capital for this year's Grand Départ.
I feel very excited and very happy. There is such a passion for cycling, for the Tour here in Leeds in Yorkshire. I'm really impressed. All the villages with bicycles painted yellow, bunting, French flags, yellow flags. It's very, very impressive.
Now, what started out as the opening weekend of a sporting event has been stretched in all directions and ended up as a 100-day festival of bell-ringing, polka-dot painting, pulling grand pianos up Crag Vale, and anything else that could be loosely tied to the tour, including record-breaking lengths of homemade bunting. Such has been the community spirit that it feels a bit like London 2012, if London 2012 had included knitting. The enthusiasm even spread to the team presentation, which is usually an event with all the glamour of a school assembly, but in Yorkshire it was turned into a big night out, complete with Grand Départ official theme song. Chris Froome rolled onto the stage as favourite to defend the title he won in Paris last year and complete a hat-trick of wins for Team Sky. But the man who started the winning streak was a ghost at the feast and not a guest. As everybody knows by now, the Tour will start in Britain without Britain's most famous rider. Bradley Wiggins has been left out of the Sky team.
Were you a part of that decision-making process? Were you consulted? Was it your decision, I suppose, is what I'm asking?
No, definitely not. I mean, I had some general input with the director sportif, Nicolas Portal, and Dave would speak to me about certain riders, but it was definitely not my decision.
Well, obviously it's my decision, obviously, and wisely. I think what you do in my job is there are 2 sides to it. One's a logical side, and the other one's an emotional side. And for the past 15 years. I've selected teams, and the way that we've always selected teams, and the way I've always selected teams to take us from, let's face it, plucky losers 15 years ago to dominating the world, two Olympic Games, winning 2 Tour de France's. The shift in mindsets from one to the other comes from setting the bar high and at times making some very, very difficult decisions based on we want to try and win. And so for me, the approach to this situation was right. Given all the evidence and the facts and where we're at, the thinking is, what team could I select which would give us the best chance of winning? And at this moment in time, Chris is the leader. I don't think there's any denying that. And then, having established that, then you work back from there and think actually what would be the best team to support him to try and win. And it's as simple as that, really.
Do you feel like a favourite?
I don't like that word, the favourite.
Well, this time last year you most certainly were, and you rode like a favourite, and you stamped your authority all over the race. Are you in the same kind of place?
For myself personally, physically and mentally, I feel as if I'm in the same kind of form that I was in last year, for last year's tour. But the way I look at it is, I'm here as a contender, a realistic contender, the defending champion. I've got the backing of a fantastic team, and even more, we've got the privilege of having a home send-off, which is massive for us.
Stage 1 starts out like a school trip. A group of 198 herded off to Harwood House for a dose of British heritage before the flag drops and the race begins. There'll be a collective nod of respect in the direction of Lizzie Armitstead's house as the race hits Otley, but no doffing of headgear for the ride through Ilkley. Hats for spectators are optional. Once the peloton passes through Skipton, they'll be into the Yorkshire Dales National Park, where the towns thin out and the scenery takes over. The first climb of the day is the Côte de Cray, better known as Kidston's Pass to the locals. Then it's on to Wensleydale to introduce the French to the concept of cheese making, and the peloton to Buttertub's Pass. At 532 metres, it's the big climb of the day. It should be spectacular, those parts of it that aren't obscured by crowds. At Reeth in Swaledale, the race will mark its most northerly point, not just today but ever, before turning towards home via the third and final climb at Grinton. The ruins of Jervo Abbey and the splendour of Ripon Cathedral will be among the attractions on the run-in that we'll see from the helicopter, but the riders won't on the ground. Then it'll be elbows out for the first sprint of the 2014 Tour in Harrogate. And that sprint will be a rare chance for Mark Cavendish to take the first yellow jersey of the race. If he does, it'll be the first of his career, and also make him the first British rider ever to wear it on British roads. So no pressure.
Tell me about stage 1. It's an unusual opening sprinter stage, isn't it? It's testing, and the finish is complex. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's the same for everybody. That's the thing, you know. It does offer some launch pads for attacks, but it also provides a straight running for the sprinters as well. So if the teams can be their control, it should be a sprint. Like I said before, it's the same for everybody. Everybody has to work the tactics around different circumstances in parkours, and hopefully it'll be a good race at the end, and we'll put on a good show for the organisers and spectators here in Harrogate.
Now, down at the start in Leeds, huge crowds were expected, and huge crowds materialised. Ned Bolting was among them.
Well, to say that excitement levels in Leeds have reached fever pitch would normally be something of an exaggeration, but in this case I will go with that line, because the Grand Départ is just a few minutes away after what feels like years of anticipation. I've been travelling up and down from Yorkshire regularly over the last weeks, and it is quite genuinely extraordinary how the county has taken to this race and the amount of efforts they've gone to welcome the Tour de France. It's here now, and all morning from 6 o'clock onwards, the trains pulling into Leeds station have just been disgorging hundreds and thousands of people who are now, well, pretty much here, looking forward to seeing the whole shenanigans pass in front of their eyes. The publicity caravan's here, parked up round the corner. The riders are here in the team buses, just waiting to sign on. And the race, as far as I'm concerned, as far as all these people here for the Grand Départ in Leeds are concerned, is ready to go.
And very shortly afterwards it went. Now, the rollout is always a ceremonial rather than actual start to a stage, but this was more ceremonial than most, because it took the peloton out to Harewood and into the grounds of Harwood House, where the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry were waiting to greet them. Lots of dodgy looking helmet hair in the peloton as they all doffed their hats for the national anthems. First in the royal reception, the 4 British riders in the race: Mark Cavendish, Geraint Thomas, Chris Froome, and 21-year-old Simon Yates making his debut for Orica Greenedge. The Red Arrows performed a fly past, with the red, white and blue Vapor Trail doing diplomatic double duty for the nation of the race and the Grand Départ. And once the royal scissors had been delivered on a cushion and put to use on the race ribbon, the 198 riders rolled back out of the grounds and onto the open road, where Tour director Christian Prudhomme dropped the flag. The first attack of the Tour came about 10 seconds later. It was started by Benoit Jarrier of the French wildcard team, Bretagne Séché Environnement. His fellow Frenchman Nicolas Edet of Cofidis went with him, and almost inevitably the indestructible Jens Vogt was there too, 42 years old and in his final Tour. In front of astonishing crowds, those 3 led over the first climb, the Côte de Cray, where Edet picked up the single King of the Mountains point at the top. They also took the first 3 places at the intermediate sprint, and behind them there was a little warm-up sprint between some of the big names. Brian Coquart beating André Greipel for 4th place, ahead of Peter Sagan and Mark Cavendish. Now, sensing his breakaway companions weren't quite up to it, Jens Voigt left them and set off on his own. With the sprinters' teams determined to have a bunch finish, it seemed a doomed enterprise, but all the more heroic for that. As we join commentary, Jens is the lone leader of the day on the big climb of the day up Buttertubs Pass.
Just looking at the crowd line there, they're actually following the contour of the dry stone wall, I think. As they don't get quite that high. Jens will top out very shortly. And the Basque flag of Spain there. Oh no, it's not Spanish, but it's the Basque flag on the right. This is enormous. The Spanish flag flying alongside the Union flag on the top. Contador versus Froome. We won't know for a few days yet, perhaps.
Phil, you know, we were expecting something special. Tour de France, when it came to London and down to Canterbury, was quite special. But Yorkshire has gone above that. Even the police cars are in yellow.
Oh dear me, the ambulances are ready for anything that may happen.
And what a man to open it up as well. He's got to be one of the most popular riders in the world, Jens Voigt. He speaks English with an Australian accent. He loves to race around the world, and he's the man who will always look for a breakaway. And what a way to do it in his last year as a professional cyclist in Yorkshire in front of an unbelievable crowd.
Another little slowing down because they're running out of road here with the traffic. And a bit of a jammed wheel there by the look of it, and that was Chris Horner, the second oldest man in the race by just about 35 days, fiddling with his bike on the road.
Well, that was just a quick glimpse there of a kilometre to go to the summit. There we can see there's a different Union flag there. Now, it will be rather interesting because if Ede gets the 1 point here, then Jens Voigt will go into the lead because Jarrier was the rider who got maximum points over the first climb. Now, look at that wind ruffling the flag there. It's obviously going to be very, very tough in the last part of this race. You can see the red flag just up towards the top there. That is the top of what the French are calling the Côte de Buttertubs. Buttertubs, and Jens Voigt is going to get him the maximum 2 points. It's not very many points for a 4.5 kilometre climb, but I think he'll take that.
Well, it puts him equal with Ede, presuming Ede is riding in second place, will get it, and so that would be okay. Oh no, it was Harrier got the points of the first one, quite right. So he's got to, so it's working out nicely for him. Voigt is going to be the leader.
Yep, as long as Jens Voigt can keep going here and get himself the 2 points, he will be the leader. Ede and Jarrier will be second equal on 1 point. No contest at all here. As you can see, the wind is starting to ruffle. Shortly, Jens Voigt will start to wing around to the right. He's got himself a maximum points there too. And Ede, I think, oh again, there's so many people there.
This just has to be traffic, doesn't it?
Traffic jam.
And this is Rodriguez right in our camera here. Just checking out his back tyre, doesn't seem too concerned. In fact, he looks like he's letting a little bit of pressure out of his tyres there.
Well, these are rough roads here, Phil. The surface is not a smooth surface. It's a surface very similar to the kind of surface in the southern part of France, in the Pyrenees. It's a rough surface, so maybe he's having a bit of a hard ride. Bearing in mind, he's a guy coming back from injury. He fractured a couple of ribs when he was racing in the Giro d'Italia, and it could be hurting a bit on these rough roads. There's the Welsh flag over on the left-hand side. They'll all be waiting for the arrival of Geraint Thomas, the Olympic national champion, from London back in 2012. Ede can see the gap opening a fraction, moving away from the crowds here. He'll get himself the 2 points. It was Harrogate who got himself the win in the first climb of the day, so Jens Voigt will be the new leader on the road with one more climb to go. The next climb comes in around about 15 kilometres, about 10 miles from Buttertubs on the way to Grinton Moor, and that will leave them 61 kilometres to go. In fact, there's been a little bit of a splitting up there. I can just see Andrew Talansky and his riders from Garmin Sharp trying to make the connection there. That was because I think there was a slight traffic jam because of such a narrowing of the road there as we came up towards the top. You can see a little bit of a split in the main field, and I'm sure that's because of the number of spectators. Although you can see the team cars have been kept back by the race referee as well. We got 4 minutes to the peloton. There's the third place rider just coming over the summit, and that is Benoit Jarrier of Bretagne. 114, Chris Horner back in the convoy of cars. Now, Jarrier about to get picked up by the main field. The gap between Jens Voigt and the peloton is 4 minutes and 4 seconds, and we're 83 kilometres to go to the finish. Buttertubs behind us now as everybody's enjoying the Tour and getting into the atmosphere and the spirit of Le Tour en Yorkshire.
At Plymouth, the famous Tour de France comes to Britain for the first time in all 71 years of its existence.
For the Tour's first trip across the Channel in 1974, the UK organisers cast a glass eye over the majesty of the British landscape and opted for a few circuits of the newly opened Plimpton bypass.
The number of fans to line the 7.5-mile track is well below expectations. At most, about 15 to 20,000 as compared with the 40,000 catered for. The finish is a complete surprise, with Dutch professional Henk Plopper breaking through in the final sprint to win by 3 inches from ace French sprinter Jacques Esclasson. Patrick Sergou of Belgium was third by another 3 inches. The Cup, presented by Miss Plymouth.
20 years later, when the horror of the memory had finally faded, the French were tempted back by the opening of the Channel Tunnel for 2 days in Kent, Sussex and Hampshire. This time the number of fans was well above expectations. In fact, pretty much everything was well above expectations.
Well, it's like the Olympics coming to town for the day, isn't it?
5 years before the Olympics did come to town, the Tour made it to the capital with a Grand Départ on the Mall. By then the crowds were absolutely massive, but the UK's impact on the race was still relatively slight. Mark Cavendish was a rookie who'd never won a stage, while Bradley Wiggins was a track rider trying to adapt to the road. Neither of them finished the race. Chris Froome didn't start it, he was just turning pro. And not with Sky, of course, because Team Sky didn't exist. British cycling's come a long way from its 13 laps of the A38, and the Yorkshire Dales are unlikely to leave us pining for a return. Having said that, a stage decided by 3 inches would be most welcome.
He's hit the bottom of the last climb of the day, 3 kilometres to the summit of Grinton Moor. The crowd will cheer him on the way. Remember, they've been watching it on television anyway. Now they can see it for real here as he climbs the coat to Grinton Moor. I haven't spelt it quite right, but it doesn't matter.
No, it's not a problem at the moment. Grinton Moor, as the French would probably say here this afternoon. 3 kilometres, 6.6%. If you want to get behind this man, just shout at the television screen right now, because at 42 years of age, this man is more than likely going to walk away from the first stage of the Tour de France with a lead in the King of the Mountains competition, as he did back in 1998.
This is a bit of a serious situation for Joaquim Rodriguez. It's the way his season's been going this year, and he really wants this peloton to close down, and I'm not so sure it will now. As a lot of riders in that group will have no reason to chase down the leaders, especially if their team leader is in this front group. And this is the leader on the day.
This is what happens when you've been in a long breakaway on the rolling road, and all of a sudden there's a slight change in the gradient. Look at that. You can see his chain right over to the left-hand side of that cluster at the back. That's the lowest gear he's got on this bike. It's a complete change in pedaling style. He's suffering to get this gear over right now, but he is dreaming about getting to the top of this climb, Grinton Moor. Once he's over the top of that, there's a slight downhill, and then the road sets sail for Harrogate.
We locate the peloton now as they climb away onto Grinton Moor itself. A little bit of an extra help coming up now with Team BMC. That's the team of TJ Vanguard and the American leader of that squad. He's still in this group. I think we slipped a bit further back down. We're with the Rodriguez group here, and this is they are still trying to work this off. And there's been another squash in, and the traffic has caused riders to stop again here.
Well, this is the narrow part on the next climb of Grinton Moor. You can see this is the road. They had to actually narrow the road a fraction down to bring the riders around the cattle grid. Yep. Normally the road is a little bit wider than that. They actually extended the road around there for the Tour de France to come through. I think there'll be a few words going through the main field in French there, Phil. C'est pas facile in Yorkshire. That's translated mean it's not easy here in Yorkshire, is it? Well, it certainly isn't. There's 1 kilometre to go to the top of the climb for Jens Voigt. Once over the top, he'll feel quite comfortable. 2 points are waiting for him. That'll give him a total of 4 points on the day in the King of the Mountains competition. He doesn't care about that. It will give him the lead in the King of the Mountains competition.
Well, there's the peloton. Remember, they're a little way down, minute 34. They're closing in now because the pressure is on, because they're getting rid of riders in the peloton now, and they're pushing on to pick up Jensen. It's not going to be the complete field of 197 men who pick up Jens Voigt, that's for sure. They're also climbing quickly. Take a look at those flags. There it is, 2 points awaits Jens Voigt. That's enough to give him the King of the Mountains leaders jersey in Harrogate tonight. And like the good pro he is, he just makes sure nobody's creeping up. But they're not, Jens. They're still just 49 seconds behind you. He made it.
Very shortly, Jens Voigt will be back in the company of the main field as they go over the top of Grinton.
No race for the meagre 1 point for second place over the top. I think it's Lars Bach who's gone over there in second place. It'll be confirmed. Well, the crowd has been treated to a great spectacle here as the Tour de France has crossed the last climb of this day. More climbs tomorrow. The 3 legs of the Isle of Man flag there. They'll be hoping that'll be flying proudly by the finish. When we come to Harrogate, they now race across the top of the moors. The wind will be problematical here.
And there's Jens Voigt back in the peloton, but he will be on the podium tonight at 42 years of age as the leader of the King of the Mountains classification going into tomorrow's stage. What a man. So, strolling in the back of Vasily Kirienka, this gives you some kind of an indication how uneasy this stage is here this afternoon. It's a grippy stage over the Yorkshire moors and the dales.
Welcome back. There's still a third of stage 1 left to run, and already it's been an historic day for the Tour in Yorkshire.
.15 kilometres to go, 9 miles to the finish now. The pace has visibly quickened here, and we see the intrusion at the front of the Spanish Movistar team. We would have liked to have seen Alex Dowsett on that team, but he didn't make the final selection from Essex. And in fact, they'll be working for the Spanish sprinter Rojas. And doing a little jig on the side of the road. I don't think the Yorkshire people have a jig, but that was an example of what might be coming in the future. Now, there's the Movistar team with the big green M on their back, being joined by Cannondale, and they've got Peter Sagan, 3rd or 4th in the line of those lime green jerseys. Belisol with the white jersey of Greipel on the left. Times are changing now. We've got the Katusha team from Russia also intruding now with a full squad on the far left.
It's starting to get nervous now. Everybody's starting to get the little goosebumps on the back of their arms, just thinking about the victory on the opening stage. One of our helicopters there that bring us those amazing footage of the Yorkshire Dales here. Just that's the place you don't want to really be, at the back end of the main field. Everybody's moving into their line. Everybody's getting their organisation. In fact, Phil, just looking out of the commentary box, about 20 metres away from here, I can see the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry, and they're waiting for the race to come into town, and I think they're enjoying their afternoon in the Yorkshire sun.
They're watching the big screen across the green behind our commentary position here, and they've also got a big screen on an area they call the Stray here in Harrogate, where there is a massive party going on. Yorkshire certainly knows how to promote an event. I must say, it's been one big party in the town for 3 days now, as the peloton of the Tour de France virtually completely together races towards the last 13 kilometres of the race. The cameras you can just see on the front of the helicopter there, and they're manually controlled from the inside by a cameraman. In the old days, of course, they used to strap you on the outside, and that wasn't for the nervous.
Well, I don't think health and safety would allow that anymore.
It is
either,
a bit
Phil.
difficult.
It's a little bit difficult, a bit like the health and safety that had the little yellow jerseys taken down from the town square in Massam. They thought that the weight of the yellow jerseys, when they got wet in the rain, would cause the lamppost to fall
and
down.
I should imagine there was a collective boo to the health and safety people, but they have a job to do. Red jersey still on Lotto Belisol. The dark jerseys are on Team Movistar. The sprinters all, as they split momentarily by the traffic furniture, as we call it, but they come back together quickly. The happy, smiling faces of the people of Yorkshire.
Well, this is the calm before the storm. This is the dress rehearsal, and everybody's looking for their teammates. They're trying to get themselves into the line, muster the troops around them. You can see on the left-hand side, it's Tinkoff Saxo Bank for Alberto Contador. He doesn't want to win the stage, but he wants to keep out of danger, because it will get very dangerous and grippy as we get into the outskirts of Harrogate. On the other side, there you can see Lotto Belisol, fourth rider in that line of red jerseys. In the white is Andre Greipel. He wants to win this race. Not too far away from him, you've got riders from Movistar, keeping Alejandro Valverde to the front of this race. And a good man in the middle there, in the red and white, at the back of that line, will be Alexander Kristoff. It's his birthday today, by the way, 27 years of age. That'd be a nice present.
It'll be incredible. They have a good lead-out man in Luca Paolini as well, if that was to be the case. The wind is troublesome now. You can see the back of the field here is being pushed out into a stream. It's coming from the left of the road at the moment. It's crosswind as we go into our last 12 kilometres, 7 miles to the finish line now. And the tempo will stay high now to try and stop the movement in the peloton. Those who are at the front want to stay there, and they want nobody to come up on them now. Astana in those light blue jerseys now also pushing through as well.
Nervous times, yes. Astana looking after Vincenzo Nibali. And it is funny, as I said earlier, Phil, because you've got two races going on here. You've got the race to win this bike race overall after 3 weeks. Those guys don't want to lose any time today. They don't want to take risks and try and win an individual stage. But for them, it's extremely important to stay near the front end of the peloton. They will mix it with the sprinters until the last possible moment before handing over the reins of the race to teams like Lotto, teams like Omega Pharma, Quick-Step, and of course to Giant Shimano, who for the moment have been very noticeable by their absence, but they know how to judge their effort to perfection.
We are at 10 kilometres to go for the Tour de France in Yorkshire today, as it's bound now for Harrogate, just 6 miles from the finish. And in the last few kilometres, all of the sprinters' teams have got through to the front. And the big, not surprisingly, you've got the black and white stripes of Marcel Kittel's team, Giant Shimano. And they provided the winner on the opening stage in Corsica a year ago.
This is the business end of the main field. You can still notice just over to the top right-hand side the national champion of Italy, Vincenzo Nibali, keeping himself at the front of this race. He wants to keep out of danger, but the organisation is amazing to watch here. If you look over on the left, Katusha, you've got Lampre, you've got the next team coming in of Peter Sagan, that is Cannondale, then Astana, then Lotto Belisol. A big Adam Hansen on the front there. What an amazing bike rider he is.
9 Grand Tours in succession for Adam Hansen. He just keeps on riding the 3-week races and loves every minute. He got a reward this year with victory on the stage in the Giro d'Italia. He's just off our picture now to the right. Katusha moves to the front. Cannondale are making sure that they keep Peter Sagan in position. There is Sagan dodging in and out. You can tell him by his little goatee beard there. He always looks as though he's in a hurry. He's always busy. He's just cruising in our picture on the left. But Adam Hansen doing a great ride. The Queenslander here driving on.
The opening stage of the Tour de France very often starts with an individual time trial or a prologue. Very rarely do the sprinters have a chance. Today we've got a bunch of sprinters hoping to get across the line in first place. Alexander Kristoff, we mentioned, from Katusha. Peter Sagan from Slovakia and Cannondale. Daniele Bernati from Tinkoff Saxo Bank. He could be in there with a chance. The big three, though, for me, though, Phil, are Mark Cavendish, Marcel Kittel, Andre Greipel. We've got the French national champion, Arnaud Démare. You've got guys like Danny Van Poppel, Romain Felu. You've got Henrik Hausler of IAM Cycling. They're all looking for the victory because for a sprinter, yes, they want to win individual stages, but today there's an added bonus. Today, the first man to cross the line gets the yellow jersey. What a dream for a sprinter. The guys who normally lose massive time in the Tour de France. Today is a glorious day for somebody, but which one? There's so many of them.
Well, Mark Cavendish has got all the incentives to win here. His mum was brought up here. He spent his youth here. He wasn't a cyclist in those days. He knows the road inside. He's walked the road. He knows it inside out. The pressure is on him. An Englishman. He's never worn the yellow jersey in the Tour de France. This is his only chance to wear it today. We've got Adam Hansen to the right of our picture now as he continues to drive for Lotto Belisol. Other riders always looking to see who is worse. Svein Tuft, the white jersey in the centre, checking on the whereabouts of Simon Gerrans. Hey, take a look at this. This is the Stray in Harrogate. This isn't the finish. This is actually away from the finish, and the crowd's just seeing themselves and they're going berserk. It's an atmosphere which I have to say is akin to the Olympic Games in London in 2012. And just to make it authentic, we've got the royal family right alongside us as well.
I'll tell you what, Phil, the royal family are on their feet right now. They're up alongside the barriers. They're up there with Gary Verity, the man who has brought the race here, and I think they're going to be witness. They've got the best seat in the house, I have to admit. They're nice and clear. Of course, we've got the best seat in that. I don't know, though. Those people down there may well have the best atmosphere in the house, right in the heart here of Harrogate. It's party time in Yorkshire, but who's the man who's going to take the first yellow jersey? It's still Lotto Belisol, 5 kilometres.
5 kilometre banner, 3 miles to the finish now, and the speed we are going, we're about 6 minutes from the finish, maybe a fraction more, and the peloton still being escorted by Lotto Belisol, but the other riders now are thinking, can we outwit them in the next few corners?
The scariest thing about being a sprinter right now is, you know, if you touch your brakes, you've been in a battle to stay here at the front end of the main field. If you touch your brakes, you're going to slip back 20 or 30 places. These are the roller coasters now, and the lime green, that's Peter Sagan's team from Cannondale, trying to keep him up at the front. They look round every now and again. Lotto Belisol, if you wanted a team to win, you'd want this team to win because they've done so much work. You see the little drop of the shoulder there by Andre Greipel. That's because he didn't want to touch his brakes. He wanted to stay on the wheel of his teammate. Now they're starting to pick it up. Here is the lead-out train on the right-hand side now. The black and white jerseys, Omega Pharma Quickstep. At the back end of that line will be Mark Cavendish. The crowd here are starting to rise to the occasion.
But so is the road, and that's what's happened. The road, I told you about these small little hills. It's blown Katusha out of the action because of this rise. But in fact, Omega Pharma Quickstep have chosen the moment with Tony Martin on the far right to bring Mark Cavendish into play. So instead of destroying Mark Cavendish, this is helping him.
Cavendish has got a red peak on his hat there. There you can see red, white and blue. He's got an aerodynamic helmet on this afternoon. He's looking for every little bit of an advantage to put himself into place. All of a sudden, it was as if the nod was there. Calm down a bit. We don't want to lead out. We need firepower. We need as many men as possible. They've announced the colour now, Phil. 3.5 kilometres to go. That's 4.5 minutes to get to the finishing line. They're in control, but have they gone too far out?
I don't think they have. 3.6 kilometres, the determination on the face here of Omega Pharma Quickstep, a Belgian team trying to guide a rider who was brought up in Harrogate to the line first to present a yellow jersey which he will receive from the royal family. It's all too much, but he's the last man in the line. He's in the perfect position. He's pushed Lotto Belisol into the second wings with Andre Greipel for the moment.
You mentioned earlier Giant Shimano, the team of Marcel Kittel, who got their lead-out train worked out to perfection this season. But I think these riders here, Omega Pharma Quickstep, they've practiced to perfection a number of times throughout the course of this year. Bringing Mark Renshaw back into the mix could be extremely important for Mark Cavendish. The two of them, when they raced together on HTC, they didn't need to talk. There was almost a symbiotic relationship between the two of them. Renshaw knew when to start his sprint because he knew just how far Cavendish could go on his own.
Another little rise coming. Are they going to survive this one? Because that's provided the opportunity for Lotto Belisol to get back into the action here now. Omega Pharma Quickstep are fighting to hold front position. They want nobody now to come up on them. Mark Cavendish just staying locked in on the team he has 100% faith in. Greipel has moved to the left of our picture, staying with his team. And Peter Sagan is coming up in the middle with his team. They're going into the last 2 kilometres.
The former champion of Holland is on the front for Omega Pharma Quickstep. That's Nicky Terpstra, the winner this year, excuse me please, of Paris-Roubaix. Today he's working for Cavendish. It's now Omega Pharma Quickstep back in control at the front end of this race. The man who almost won the Tour of Switzerland is in second position. Tony Martin there, 3 times world champion, reigning world champion in the individual time trial. 1.9 kilometres to go. That's going to be less than 2 minutes now. On the left-hand side, you might just have noticed, trying to come forward in the other black and white strip is that's Giant Shimano. Cavendish now is just sitting there. He's got to close his eyes, concentrate on the wheel of the rider in front of him, and that's got to be Mark Renshaw.
Mark knows if they show him the finishing line with a clean pair of wheels, he will win. But there's a rush on the right side. Cofidis are trying to spoil the party here. The French team are pulling through on the right, and that's going to disrupt the sprinters. Only Omega Pharma's Quickstep keeping control on our right as we look at the pictures.
Well, that's just a little bit of confusion. You saw them move forward there from Cofidis, but they don't have the firepower to continue. Look how ragged they are now. They've split to pieces. All of a sudden, they're all over the place. They were just trying to move a rider to the front. Tony Martin now is in control, but he's getting challenged there by Giant Shimano. They're keeping it nice and calm here. The 2 big teams of the 2 big sprinters are right in control of this main field. They're looking for the final kilometre. They're looking for the final charge down towards the finishing line. There's a move over on the left from Trek Factory Racing, trying to create the surprise on the climb. That looks like the shape of Fabian Cancellara.
It is an attack by Fabian Cancellara, who has gone clear, and this is what we call a cheeky move to disrupt the whole of the situation here. As we start to go up towards the finish, this is a desperate. He's done it before, Paul. He's done it when we've come into Compiègne in the past, and this is a great move by the man we call Fabulous Cancellara. Spartacus is his nickname.
When he won the stage into Compiègne, he had a yellow jersey on his shoulders. He's coming over the top now. He's charging down towards where the traffic lights were last night. Now he's got the kick up towards the finishing line. He's got a gap. There's not many men can pull this off, and they're looking ragged behind. They realise Fabian Cancellara may have created the surprise this afternoon. 500 metres to go.
Cavendish has got to come, and he's too far down here. Cancellara's not going to make it. Kittle's going to try and get in. He's getting led out by Degenkolb, but there's been a crash there. Gerrans has gone down on the line. A touch of wheels as the breakaway goes clear now, and it's going to be Peter Sagan, and Kittel is challenging him. Kittel and Sagan trying to go for the line here. It's going to be a desperately close finish, but it's going to be the same as last year. Marcel Kittel takes victory on the line, and again as the result as a crash, and that is a terrible scene for us on the road. A touch of wheels and Mark Cavendish in all sorts of trouble when it should have been a day of glory for him. That's so sad. There was the touch, there was elbows there. Cavendish leaning on Simon Gerrans, and then the earth gave way and they both went down on the floor.
Well, let's have a look at this. You can see, I'd like to see whose fault it is. Gerrans is closing the door there. You can see that Cavendish is trying to go through the gap. Gerrans mixing it. Difficult to say whose fault it was there. Cavendish was underneath Gerrans. Gerrans was in front. They went down very hard.
Very hard, and almost right in front of the VIP stand where Mark Cavendish's horrified mother was standing 2 spots down from David Cameron. It was 3.5 minutes later that Cav got up and rolled in, holding his arm in the familiar position of a man who's broken his collarbone. He got into the ambulance to be taken off for x-rays. Simon Gerrans was up and chipper enough to be giving post-race interviews.
Oh, I'm not exactly sure what happened just yet. I'll be obviously watching the replay when I get back to the hotel. I think it'll be replayed over a few times, but yeah, it's pretty unfortunate to get tangled up in a crash so close to finish.
Now, it looks like Mark's gone off to hospital, but what about yourself?
Yeah, I won't be going off to hospital. Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit stiff and sore tomorrow, and I've lost a bit of skin, but yeah, I think I'm all still in one piece.
Now, whether or not the crash would have affected the stage result, we'll never know, but Marcel Kittel was a clear winner from Peter Sagan and Ramūnas Nevadauskas. Brian Coquard was 4th, Michael Rogers 5th, Chris Froome a surprising 6th, ahead of Alexander Kristoff and Sepp van Mark. Fabian Cancellara, who contributed to the chaos with his late attack, came in 11th. Geraint Thomas 17th, 1 place up on Andre Greipel. Alberto Contador, Vincenzo Nibali and Simon Yates all finished in the main group on the same time as the winner. And despite being 192nd, Mark Cavendish lost no time because his crash was inside the final 3 kilometres. Well, he bookended last year's Tour with wins on stages 1 and 21, and he started the same way. For all the talk of rarity of yellow jerseys in the Tour career of a sprinter, Marcel Kittel now has 2.
I'm very, very happy that I could win that stage today. I'm so proud. It's actually a very emotional win because there was quite some pressure. It's a big relief to be the first again today, and yeah, it's something that I will never forget in my life.
Just a word on Mark Cavendish, because he fell. You don't want to see that in a fellow sprinter, so what would be your message to him tonight?
Yeah, I hope he gets well soon. I don't know how badly he's injured. I hope he's all right, and yeah, then I'm looking forward to see him tomorrow in the race again, so I wish him all the best.
Well, while we're waiting for word on Mark Cavendish, let's look at tomorrow's stage. Just over 200 kilometres from York to Sheffield, and it's a tough day with 9 climbs on the route. The first and best named, especially with its French prefix, being the Côte du Blubberhouses. Keighley gets the intermediate sprint, Haworth gets a day off from dealing with the world's Bronte pilgrims, and Crag Vale is wrapped into the Ripponden climb before the big challenge of the day, Home Moss. There are 4 climbs inside the final 35 kilometres, the last of them in Sheffield itself on the murderously steep Jenkin Road. That's only 5 kilometres from home, so there should be no repeat of Stage 1 sprint, at least not one that involves any sprinters. We'll have Stage 2 for you live from 10:30 tomorrow morning on ITV1 and ITV4, and we'll be staying all the way on both channels. Highlights on 4 as usual at 7 in the evening. Of course, the big question is whether Mark Cavendish is going to be riding Stage 2 tomorrow, and the news we have so far is not good. In fact, we have no official news. The rider and the team are both saying nothing this evening, but what we understand unofficially is that Mark Cavendish has had an X-ray, nothing's broken. However, some ligament seems to have become detached from the bone, and he is rated somewhere between 50-50 and unlikely to start tomorrow. And I have to say, Chris, doesn't sound like something you can ride through, ligament being detached from bone.
Well, I'm amazed that he hasn't actually broken anything. I can't believe that, but I think the chances of him starting to be far more than amazed that you just don't come back from something like that. I think Mark's seen the end of this year's Tour de France. Very disappointing, but it isn't something that you can ignore. It's not something you can ride through.
Yeah. When we first saw the crash from head on, it looked like a straight leaning match between Simon Gerrans and Mark Cavendish, which it was to a large extent. But when you look at it from the overhead, you can see the unwitting part that Brian Coquard, the Europe car rider on the left in the green, played.
Yeah, he just removed the wiggle room there that Cavendish could see that Gerrans was coming across, and he leaned on him as a sort of a preemptive strike to stop himself getting squashed out. But because of Coquard, there was nowhere for Gerrans to go, and it was just one of those things, high speed, high stakes. I don't think there's anybody at fault there, just the consequences were bad for Cavendish.
OK, so terrible day for Mark Cavendish, but overall a fabulous day. I mean, it's customary on these kind of occasions to say weren't the crowds marvellous, but they were absolutely astonishing. Yeah,
I mean, the tragic there that ironically it's a really low crash day for the first stage of the Tour. Crowds were incredible, not just along the route but the depth of them, and even more amazingly, unlike normal stages of the Tour, they were all over the country at fan parks, thousands of people together watching it on television, so it's been a countrywide phenomenon.
Well, we've had 3 members of the royal family, 1 Prime Minister, assorted dames, knights, MBEs, CBEs and cycling legends here at the Tour today. But they've all had to take second billing to the great British public, who've turned in one of the great spectating performances in Tour history. Good night.